It was a heartbreaker for the San Francisco 49ers and San Francisco 49ers fans watching their team's season just go down the drain at a wet Levi's Stadium. 12-6 loss to the Rams. Players quitting on the team. We've got news from Kyle Shanahan on Devondre Campbell. There are some positives to take away from this game, but a whole lot of negative. What's wrong with the Niners? Where are we at going into the end of the season, into 2025? All that and more with my guy, Jason Aponte, coming at you right now. Brian Peacock at BD Peacock on Twitter. You know Jason Aponte at Jason Aponte 2103. We're simulcasting on the OT with BP, Overtime with Brian Peacock channel, my extra time channel. You know me doing Locked On 49ers daily with my guy Eric Crocker. Make sure you subscribe to that. The Peacock and Williamson NFL show daily, breaking down the entire league on the Locked On Podcast Network. And it's extra thoughts, a little less scripted here on OT with BP. Jumping on weekly with my guy, Jason Aponte. Make sure you're subscribed up to the Jason Aponte YouTube channel. You can hear all of his podcasts. Fantastic stuff there. And we're busy in the podcast world talking about these San Francisco 49ers, Jason. And when you see a game that's 12-6, you start to wonder, like you start to feel small, right? You start to zoom out. You go, what am I doing with my life? Talking about a team every single day that goes out there and scores 6 points in prime time for the entire world to see. And then you have a player walk off the field in the middle of a game. The 49ers are finding new ways. This is really insane how this 2024 season has gone for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, this is the most Jets 49ers season I've seen in a long time, right? I think if we ripped the decal off of the helmet, you would say, man, the Jets are just jetsing. But when it comes on the heels of a team that has been, in the dance many times and prides itself on being a top tier organization and built on culture, just this season just feels like one of the weirdest during the Kyle Shanahan time. So, yeah, I guess that's the best way we can put it. Is just this is the most Jets 49ers season I've ever seen in my life.
Pretty unbelievable. We'll get into more specifics and the dirty details of this game and this season. But we do have some news, and Kyle Shanahan just spoke to the media right before we went live here with more information on Dre Greenlaw. He had no answers about it. He's like, I don't know. When a player says he's not playing, you move on. You got to play the rest of the football game without him. So after sleeping on it, Jason laid out for us what is the latest on Devondre Campbell and Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, Devondre Campbell's not going to be with the team the rest of the year. They're going through the semantics of it as described by Kyle Shanahan, which either means suspension for the entire year or outright release. I think the way that they're kind of going through this is how can they hurt how can they hurt Campbell the most? They can take away his money with refusal to play. They can stop him from signing with another team. Although if you're another football team and you just watch what Devondre Campbell did, I don't think there's any reason to the juice is not worth the squeeze at this point when it comes to Devondre Campbell. So the idea that, oh, well, we don't want him to go to another team. What organization would have watched what Devondre Campbell just did and said, let's bring him in. Let's take a chance, because nobody was willing to take a chance on him before this after Eric Kendricks bolted on the 49ers for Dallas. So yeah, it just sounds like they're just trying to figure out how to sock it to him and how to figure out, the best way to do it. So he's not going to be around, but it may just be suspension, detrimental to the team, may just be outright release. I don't really care if he goes somewhere else because he's not been good at all. And when you toss in the attitude, who really wants that in their building, on their practice squad at all?
Devondre Campbell did enough for another team to not want him on their team by playing. And right. So by not playing and quitting on the team was just a nail in the coffin for him, because let's be honest, Devondre Campbell, he can be as mad as he wants. He can have, a broken ego about a better player playing in front of him on Thursday night in week 15. More on Dre Greenlaw, the maybe lone big time positive. There are some other positives from this game. The defense did allow only 12 points, by the way. So most of the negatives for me go to the offensive side of the ball. But Devondre Campbell was not good this year. Like 49ers fans were already like, thank goodness Dre Greenlaw is coming back, because this guy's been awful. And he has not been good. Whether it's the eye test, whether it's the film grinders, whether it's just the fans in the stadium not liking what they see from Devondre Campbell on the field for the 49ers this year, go to the Pro Football Focus grades for just a little double check on the eye test, right? The 25th best graded, not player on the team, just defensive player on the team. I think, let me double check this. Yeah. The 25th highest graded defender on the team. There's wide receivers that were graded better as defensive players because of their tackles they made on special teams than Devondre Campbell. Devondre Campbell, the 25th highest graded defender on the team this year. Bad against the run, bad against the pass. He's been bad for the 49ers and has no room to have any gripes for getting benched for especially Dre Greenlaw. But whether it was going to be Demetrius Flanagan-Falls or D. Winters or Jalen Graham or anybody off the street, he should have no gripes about being benched for anybody. So just an awful display by him. And you're right. No team is going to want to pick him up for you think a team that's ready to go make the playoffs wants to bring that onto their roster, a bad football player who also is willing to quit on his team. And so when it comes to Devondre Campbell and the 49ers, clearly he's not going to don a 49ers uniform anymore. But, and I don't want it to be about hurting him necessarily, but for the 49ers, you got to send a message. And at this point, okay, well, look, it was a 2-year contract. They put 3 void years on his contract to try to fit him under the salary cap. So I think the 49ers are well within their right to go after some of that signing bonus, because that signing bonus was spread over a couple of years of a contract. And if you didn't finish out your first year of the contract, I think the 49ers are right to say, hey, not only are we going to suspend you without pay the rest of the year or fine you and cut you, whatever that combination of things is, they can, I think, potentially even go after more money from Devondre Campbell. It's unbelievable. Cannot happen. It's awful. And for Devondre Campbell, he's walking off the field smiling. Such a bad look for him as a human being, as a teammate, as a professional. But on top of that, like Devondre Campbell, whatever happens with his pocketbook getting hit, he's a pretty rich guy. And as long as he was good with his money, he'll be fine. But his name will be forever linked with being a quitter. I have friends. I have a friend I grew up with. His name is Scott Campbell. Shout out to Scott Campbell. He's not a 49ers fan. He's not listening to this show, I'm sure. But every time I hear the name Scott Campbell, I'm going to think, oh, Campbell, quitter, right? He's done his family's name dirty. He's done every Campbell that's ever lived in the world dirty that follows football. They're going to hear Campbell. They're going to think quitter. That's going to follow him around for the rest of his life, Jason.
I don't even want Campbell's soup. I could be sick right now at this point. Like he's even ruined something that's really easy.
The entire soup companies have to change their name.
Yeah. And you know what's funny about this whole situation is the idea of Devondre Campbell was as a placeholder. And now, as a placeholder, the player that you are holding the spot for has returned. And you have an issue with that as if that wasn't the plan the entire time. Funny other things is this has been exactly who he's been. You know, he leaves out of Green Bay and he talks about, I've been misused. And whenever I hear I've been misused and you've been playing poorly, I think selfishness. I think me type of guy, right? And again, I want to reiterate, the reason that Devondre Campbell was signed was because Eric Kendricks bolted for the Dallas Cowboys, so he was the backup to the backup plan. So you think about that part of it. Then you watch Dre Greenlaw go out there and recover from an Achilles and throw himself all over the football field. Fred Warner's playing on a fractured ankle. It's a must-win football game. And the other part of all of this that's so interesting is the idea of tanking. And Brian, you and I have really pushed back on this idea because players have to show what they're worth whenever they get their opportunities to continue to work in this league. Well, guess what, Devondre Campbell? Not only have you shown your demeanor, you have shown that no one is going to take a chance on you at this point because, again, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And when you had a chance to go out there, you could have made a player here, 2 or there that would have shown, hey, this guy got thrown in a pinch. You know, he showed resiliency by getting benched and coming back out there. But no, all you did was send up all of the things that people already thought about you, on top of the fact that you have been bad at football. Ironically, this comes on the heels of his best game as a 49er against the Chicago Bears, where he was the highest graded defender. And instead of understanding all of these things and understanding that I have to put good film out there, I have to put good word of mouth, perhaps there would be a team that would take me as a depth piece down the line next season. No, you decided to cry and pout. And I thought that what the locker room said after the game was so. I've never seen George. I've been covering this team since 2019, indirectly outside of the building. I have never seen George Kittle that upset. Even when the 49ers get absolutely boat raced, he's always like, yeah, we got to get back to work. I have a lot of belief in this team. Ignorant, stupid, dumb. Those are the words that came out of his mouth. Mooney Ward said it was sucker shit. It's disrespectful to the guys that are out there. Mooney Ward's lost a kid. Trent Williams is trying to fight his way back. Like all of these guys are going through things more than your ego being bruised. And you decided to deal with it this way. And the message has to be clear. The message is not to the fans. The message is to that locker room, to those guys that are going to be there, because Devondre Campbell wasn't going to be here one way or another, however this played out next season. The message has to be clear. We do not tolerate any of this. And for everyone that wants to look around and say, well, has Shanahan lost the locker room? Shanahan has to send a clear message that this will not be tolerated. I have not lost the locker room. Everyone's bought in. And if you're not bought in, then you are absolutely sent out of here. I don't remember anything like this happening. At least Vontae Davis quit at halftime, and he gave his coach some time to prepare, to go back into the half. This guy walked off the field, and I had no idea until the end of the game. It's just one of the worst looks that you can have as a football player. And Devondre Campbell, this will be your legacy in the NFL. I hope you're happy, because this is what you will be remembered for. Not your all-pro season, not the many years of service in this league. This moment will be your stain.
No doubt. And it's really easy to say, okay, cut him. He never comes back again. I want Devondre Campbell to come back for one day. I think the 49ers should make him come back into the building and face his teammates before they dole out whatever suspension it is to him, face to face, whatever release it is. And I think they would go a long way showing him how to act like a man in the situation. And I really do think that that Devondre Campbell should face the leaders of the locker room. He should face George Kittle and Fred Warner and Diamador Lenore and Trent Williams. And that should be part of it. So if it means he's a Niner for one more day before any of the penalties are divvied out, then so be it. And look, if he doesn't show up to that, that just makes the 49ers ground stronger when they're trying to go after him for maybe remaining signing bonus, because he didn't obviously abide by his side of the. And look, this is so, and people always say like, oh, the team can cut a player at any time. Yeah. And guess what? They walk away with their signing bonus. Mm-hmm. But if you quit and don't finish the first half of even your 2-year contract, I think the 49ers are well within their rights trying to go after more money. Will they? I don't know. Will it just be a suspension? We'll see what ends up happening. But I would like to see Devondre Campbell a Niner for one more day, so he has to walk into the facility and face his teammates.
When Kyle Shanahan started talking about Devondre Campbell, he started and said he's not here. He's not here today. So whether that's the 49ers saying don't come here, or he just knows I'm probably, whether one way or the other, he's not there and he won't be here. So yeah, we don't know. That's the part that I think is the most damning, is facing your teammates. Guys are laying it all on the line in a must-win game. Guys are playing hurt. Guys are throwing their body around there in the rain. And to do that to those players is a slap in the face. It's a slap in the face to the coaching staff. It's a slap in the face to fans. I mean, fans spent their hard-earned money to go to that game for a must-win game in the rain, and you decided to spit in everybody's face. And it just shows that not everybody is solid. And I think everybody understands that that's not tolerated. There's never been anything like that. You can make the assumption that a player might be quiet quitting by maybe being lackadaisical on the field, but walking off the field, that's insane. I mean, the only other thing that would have made it crazier is if he would have just did the Antonio Brown thing and just like took all his stuff off and just ran off, which maybe might have made it a little bit more entertaining, but there's just no call for it. And it's disrespectful to every person that wishes they had an opportunity, that wishes that they were on a bench with a chance to get their number called to play. It's disrespectful to every single person who lays it on the line every single day in practice, in meetings, and they give it all on the field. It's more than just a walk-off. It's a sign of absolute disrespect for the game and the people that have come before you and the people that are trying to get into the league, and it's entitlement, 100%.
But we have a lot to talk about with just one specific position group on the 49ers when it comes to linebacker. And a positive thing that happened out there was how awesome Dre Greenlaw was in his return. And you could feel him out there on the field immediately. I only had one game ball to give out on the post-game Locked On 49ers podcast, and it was to Dre Greenlaw. And it was so awesome seeing him back out there again. And Fred Warner, I think, even started to play a little bit better when he had a better partner next to him at linebacker. Like, those guys were phenomenal. They're flying around, making plays. They were the two highest graded players going back to the PFF grades in the game. It was awesome seeing Dre Greenlaw back out there. It's unfortunate that he started to get feel a little something in his knee, and you got to be smart. We saw it with Dre Greenlaw before. Dre Greenlaw he ruptured his Achilles on the opposite side of the Achilles. He was dealing with the tendonitis last season. We saw the tendonitis with Christian McCaffrey this year, and he's dealing with one thing, and then it leads to another thing, and then he has a non-contact knee injury. And so you got to be smart with it. And so I'm glad the 49ers were smart, took his helmet away, and even with Campbell not going back in, they put Demetrius Flanagan-Foles had his own injury going on. He's limping out there playing through things. So the Niners really banged up at linebacker, and Fred Warner has a broken ankle that needs to get fixed, right? So at this point, it's like, Jalen Graham, he's been on the taxi squad, coming back and forth from the practice squad all season long. D. Winters and Jalen Graham, let's go the rest of the year. Let's get surgery on Fred Warner. Put Greenlaw on ice. Make sure nothing's getting more hurt there, and bring these guys back for a run next year. It's not a tank. It's maybe a soft tank or an elegant tank, but it's being smart and doing right by your guys. And look, Campbell doesn't want to be a part of it. That's okay. Let's see the young guys. Let them play. Let them get some NFL experience, and that'll inform your offseason as you head forward into next year. But I can't say more about how awesome it was to see Dre Greenlaw out there, how good he is, and how much impact he makes on the team.
Yeah, it's funny enough, on NinersNation.com, I write an article called Gold Jackets, where I give out a game ball on both sides of the ball. And it was obviously Dre Greenlaw. And stats just don't tell the story about how Greenlaw affected this defense. The energy was palpable. And I'm so glad that you mentioned Fred Warner, because Fred Warner finishes with a 92.1 PFF grade, leads the team with tackles. It's so funny to see that all of a sudden one person shows up and everyone's flying around, and the energy is completely different. And if George Kittle's the heart and soul of the 49ers offense, then Dre Greenlaw's the heartbeat of this defense. And you saw that in this game. And that's what stats don't tell you. On 30 snaps, he had nine tackles. If he would have played the full complement of snaps, he would have probably finished with 20, the way he was flying around. Like, if you had any worries about how he would look off of the Achilles, that feels like that's squashed out. Even if it's just 30 snaps, you would imagine with more rest and him just being fine going into the offseason, hey, he's going to be ready to go. So we've knocked that one out. That's a huge positive. But the energy was palpable through the entire team. Guys are out there flying through blocks. You even see Jair Brown play a little bit better in this game with Hufanga. Everybody was energized. This defense gave up 4 field goals in this game. If I would have told you, Brian, before the game, 4 field goals, the 49ers went 28-12.
Oh, I would have lost so much money. I would have bet my mortgage. I would have bet my firstborn that the 49ers win a game if you told me it was going to be a 12-point Rams offense with 4 field goals.
Yeah, and good.
I was just to say, and that's why everything, when I look at this game, everything goes to Kyle, everything goes to the offense. We can get into specific players as well. And in a lot of ways, I think Devondre Campbell got Brock Purdy, got Kyle Shanahan, got Deebo Samuel off the hook. Because we're talking about, we led with Devondre Campbell. We didn't lead with, oh my God, Brock Purdy was terrible, can't throw the ball in the rain. Deebo Samuel talked so much trash, can't back it up during the week. We were talking about Devondre Campbell. So in some ways, I think he might have been a little bit of a shield and done some of those guys a favor, because it would be a little bit different of a conversation to start this podcast with the way the 49ers played, especially on offense last night.
Yeah, the offense was the reason this 49ers team lost this game. Like, don't sugarcoat it. Don't bury the lead. I think that's evidence to anybody who doesn't think that the 49ers defense played well last night. I mean, aside from a coverage bust from Tashawn Gibson, who probably shouldn't have been in the game anyway, after, with the deep post to Puka Nacua, and then another coverage bust on the critical third down, to Kobe Parkinson, where Cooper Kupp goes and everybody just goes with them. The secondary was clamps. I mean, if you watch the Amazon broadcast, and I was so glad it was on Thursday Night Football. If you watch the Prime Vision broadcast, it would have really drove home the fact that the secondary was everywhere and they had no lanes to throw the football in. And that's what makes the offense even more frustrating, in my opinion, because you see that throw from Purdy to Juwan Jennings, and I'm literally yelling at the screen, no, like there's no lane. There's no lane to throw that football. There's no passing lane to throw that football. And then you see the one to Pearsall, and you know that ball's got to be bent the other way, and he throws it back the other way. And Spoon, like, that's the advantage of the Prime Vision. I implore anybody, and if you guys want to watch it, I was just watching it again. You can go back on Amazon and watch the replay with the Prime Vision, so you can watch it. You don't necessarily even have to wait for the all 22. You can go back and watch it in real time. I loved it, but the secondary, I want to get back to that more than anything. The secondary was the honorable mention for me when it came to game ball, because they were great. Mooney Ward, whatever they graded him, I feel like he was great in this game. And he's going to get the blame and get dinged for the target with Nakua. But realistically, Gibson came up too far and he needs to be playing the post. But again, 12 points. If you told me that you were going to stop a Rams offense that scored 44 points against the Buffalo Bills last week and hold them to 12 points, I would have said the 49ers would have at least scored 13. But nope, you end up with 2 field goals. You don't even get into the red zone in this game. And I just think the defense, it's a wasted performance and a wasted gem. And it encapsulates the 2024 49ers. When the defense plays very well, the offense struggles. When the offense plays very well, the defense struggles. And that's up and down, and that's been the story of the 49ers in 2024, and that's the reason that they have the record that they have.
I will second you on the Prime Vision. It's the best way to watch a game, and you don't have to wait for the big networks to go to. Fox drives me crazy for some reason the most. I feel like they always go to commercial right when there's a big play and you want to see a replay. What happened? Show me the end zone angle. Show me the all 22 angle of this play. How did it happen? And all you see is a zoomed up thing, and something happens. You're like, what happened? I don't know. And then we're leaving for commercial. And so the Prime. By the way, were they able to identify the correct Trent Williams on the Prime? The Prime Vision broadcast, because the main broadcast got that one wrong, by the way.
The best part about that, Brian, is if you look at the picture, and I posted it on Twitter, if you look at the picture, the person that they identified as Trent Williams, it's almost like he's looking into the camera and knows that he's being misidentified. Like, I know Amazon is also nonsense.
It's like a stand-in during a movie. It's like, hey, can you stand in here? Trent's over there getting some work done on his ankle. Can you stand in here? I don't know who. I thought it was Malik Collins, but whoever it was in street clothes. Malik Collins had a uniform on last night, so maybe it was Khalil
Davis.
Khalil Davis, is that who it was? Might have been.
I think so. That's who I'd bet on.
Yeah. So I still don't know exactly who that was. It definitely wasn't Trent Williams. That was unbelievable. I was dying, dude. That was so funny. It was by far the best part of the football game, to be honest with you.
Easily.
When the 49ers lose 12-6. Mm-hmm. I guess we got to talk about the offense then and get a little bit more specific here. Deebo Samuel. He talked his talk. And part of me thought, you know what, Deebo? Okay, be angry and go show us what you got. Make some plays. The 49ers couldn't make plays. Brock Purdy clearly has a problem throwing in the rain. He's not the strongest arm quarterback in the first place. And so when you start to, he's kind of right at that line, right? Of if he drops below the line, he starts to be in the trouble zone of maybe the arm is not quite good enough NFL caliber to do what you need to do. And I think a wet football takes him below that line in some cases, which is not great going forward when you start thinking about how much money you got to pay him. And, is he a true franchise quarterback for your football team? And we'll have a lot of those conversations in the offseason and how much he might get paid. And obviously was not a good game for Brock Purdy, but even when he did make a good throw, nobody could make a play. And he made some bad throws, but he underthrows Ricky Pearsall. And then Pearsall can't even jump at the right time to even make a play on the ball. We see a lot of players in a lot of games make plays on underthrown footballs and at least get a PI out of it, or at least, go up and try to make a play on the ball. That can't happen. And obviously he follows it up with throwing an interception, which is awful. It was bad. It was overthrown, and it was not catchable for his receiver. But then he makes a good throw, and Deebo Samuel drops the ball. And Kyle Shanahan's dialing up Deebo early and often in the game and featuring him in a football game. And he still couldn't. He had an even worse game than he had the week before. So basically, Like Deebo at this point is washed. Like that's and it's not like, oh man, he had a bad game, so he's washed. It keeps happening. He's not making the plays that he used to as a player. Doesn't mean he's not an NFL player still. Doesn't mean he's a bad human being. He at least, not like Devondre Campbell, he was at least out there trying hard. Maybe he's trying too hard. Looked like he might have taken a peek upfield trying to run before he caught the ball on the big drop. But when you talk and you don't come through, it makes it even more obvious. And the fans at Levi Stadium were booing him after the drop. Like everyone's noticed right now. And so for Deebo Samuel, is the magical ride over for him? Is he a different player now? Does he need to be treated differently in the offense? Does he need to not be on the team with how much he's making anymore this offseason? It's going to be a big decision.
Yeah, the problem is that game plan just seemed like that was 2021 Deebo. And on top of the discussion is it's the timing of his message. Following the best win of the 49ers season, following the best offensive performance of the season, you decide to complain and say, I'm not struggling, I'm just not getting the ball. Okay. So I think we all kind of put it in our minds, Kyle Shanahan's going to start to try to get him the ball. That's probably more detrimental to the game plan at this point to force feed him. The best offensive player on the San Francisco 49ers in 2024 is George Kittle. Many other teams have tight ends, and they pepper that tight end with targets when he's the best player on the field, i.e. Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Travis Kelce. When that guy is your guy, you don't placate other guys, especially when the times that we've gotten you the ball. By the way, Deebo Samuel on pace for the same amount of targets and touches that he's had for 3 straight years in the upper 90s, by the way. So let's stop with I'm not getting the ball. But on top of the discussion, it was just poorly timed. And then you go out there and you put up that. And the problem is I think we all kind of said, well, if there was ever a get right moment, ever a bounce back moment, he's dominated the Rams before. He's just not that guy anymore, unfortunately. And when you go to the lengths that you have in this game plan to get Deebo the football and get him involved, but at the expense of the overall offense and not understanding who's your actual playmakers on the field this season or the guys that have actually been carrying you, i.e. George Kittle, because I don't want to see any game in 2024 at this point when you look up at targets that doesn't have George Kittle at the top of it. There's no reason for Juwan Jennings to have 9 targets with him and Deebo with 7. You need to flip those things, and it needs to be George Kittle, especially when you see the success that he had over the middle of the field, which is exactly where the Rams were vulnerable on defense. So for Deebo, it's the talk, it's the non-production, and now it's coming at the expense of the offense and the game plan. And it comes back to a larger discussion about Kyle Shanahan and what he was thinking going into this game. If you're the head coach and your team puts up 38 points and your team finally resembles on offense the team that they look like in 2023, and Deebo Samuel complains, it's up to you to say, I don't care if you complain. I'm going to do what's best for the team. This guy's playing better than you. Because in the Chicago game, what happened? They fed George Kittle, and what did he do? He went crazy. The offense opened up. And when you start to put yourself in a spot where you are forcing yourself to throw the ball and manufacture touches for a guy who has been inefficient and ineffective largely, that's what you're going to get. And that part is the part that I'm going to throw at the feet of Kyle Shanahan.
Now, hold on just a second in the chat. Deebo, just a podcast guy now. Don't disrespect Jason Aponte, a podcaster, right? It's not a bad gig being a successful podcaster, okay, guys? So let's not get that twisted out there. But look, Deebo Samuel's an NFL player. At this point for the 49ers, the best thing he does is return kicks, like the $25 million kick returner. And that just doesn't add up. And he just hasn't been the guy. And I can't tell you exactly why. He doesn't look super slow or anything. It's just like, that one little move, that one little burst that he's made in the past, breaking that one arm tackle. He's not really doing any of them. It's just, he's not the same. He's not making the same plays he used to. And I love that he's still focused and he's still confident in his abilities, but Kyle Shanahan has to realize who the best players on his team are and the best way to coordinate an offense. And it boggles my mind every single week that George Kittle doesn't get it. Like George Kittle should get double-digit targets every single week, and that's like not a new development here. We talk about it all the time on Locked On 49ers. And Kittle's their best offensive player. He's their biggest mismatch, and he needs to get the ball more. He needs to be featured more in the offense if the offense is going to be better. But the ship has sailed this year, right? So now we have to go into next year. And I see a lot of people bringing up Ricky Pearsall. This is funny because he says I don't even know how to pronounce this name. What is it? Gojira Von Jink. Gojira Von Jink says, quite frankly, Tyshawn, aka Deebo Samuel, needs to retire. 101 receiving yards in 5 games. He's a scrub. Hold on. He said something else about
Pearsall needs to start the last 3.
Yeah, Pearsall needs to start the last 3 games while Tyshawn runs the bench. By the way, Tyshawn Samuel, I did make the joke on last night's podcast that Tyshawn went from Deebo to Smokey real quick as it pertains to
excellent Friday reference.
Friday.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And but Pearsall's the cardio king. Pearsall's not making a big impact. I just talked about him at the catch point getting knocked off. He looked like a high school kid out there trying to make an attempt of a catch. And like it's not Pearsall's a rookie wide receivers can take some time. I don't think Kyle and Brock trust Pearsall for whatever reason a large amount. But when we're talking about cardio, can I just get to this stat real quick here, Jason? Because Ricky Pearsall's obviously caught very few balls over the last 4 games, even though he's running a ton of routes. But he still was not the cardio king that Cooper Kupp was in this game. Cooper Kupp ran 4.69 miles, according to Next Gen Stats, 0 receptions, 0 yards, 0 touchdown stat line while running 4.69 miles. Diamador Lenore quote tweeted that and said conditioning test. So Pearsall made a bigger impact than Cooper Kupp did. So there's an even more king of cardio than Ricky Pearsall in the NFL right now, and it was Cooper Kupp on Thursday night. But I don't know what the answer is this year. It's too late this year. Mm-hmm. Next year, you hope that Pearsall's ready to go, and he's a true starting wide receiver, and you would expect that with where the 49ers drafted him. You're going to get Brandon Ayuk back, and hopefully Kittle is healthy and still the same guy. But I've heard people talking about how Kittle, he's making a lot of money, getting older. He's the tight end is some of the best money you can spend in the NFL. If all he did was block, he'd be worth his contract. If all he did was just receive and was a bad blocker, he'd be worth his contract. The fact that he can do both, phenomenal deal for George Kittle. He should ask for more money, let alone get cut. That's asinine to me. So, George Kittle, phenomenal, needs to be a bigger part of the offense. And unfortunately, we're going to have to look toward next year a little bit more. But down the stretch, I agree. Like, you got to see a lot of Ricky Pearsall. Get him ready so it's not like, oh, he's not quite ready to go yet. Because remember, it was year 2 for Brandon Ayuk when he was in that doghouse, because everyone was like, oh, Brandon Ayuk, here we go. Year 1 played a lot. Year 2, he's going to be the guy. And then it was like, wait a second. No, he's still not ready to be a pro. He's not ready to be a true starting caliber player in Kyle Shanahan's offense. So the more work you can get Ricky Pearsall this year, I think the better. And maybe throw him some more balls, some more catchable balls too, please. And not just out there getting his cardio would be better for Ricky Pearsall down the stretch. But it goes right along with the linebackers we just talked about. Right now, we're in evaluation mode now. The season's over for the 49ers. I know they're not quite mathematically out of it, but it's time to get a look at as many guys as you can. And it's not a tank. It's just being smart. And the guys that are hurt, make sure they are healthy going into the offseason, going into next season, so they're not getting surgeries late. And so they're not like, oh, he's not quite ready to go for camp. Like, I want Fred Warner to be 100% ready to go Fred Warner before training camp starts. I want healthy Greenlaw, and hopefully they're able to make that work before camp. I want everybody to be healthy and ready to go as early as possible so they don't have this problem again next year. And that's where I'm at with that. And I don't know how good Ricky Pearsall is going to be, but you know what? Deebo Samuel's just not that dude anymore. And that's reality. That's where we're at until he proves otherwise. And you think he might have to prove otherwise on another team.
Yeah, and at the end of the game, you kind of saw that shift. It was Deebo was off the field after the kick returns, and it was Pearsall. And I think what everyone is thinking about is obviously, if a rookie makes a mistake in the name of development, I can live with that. When a veteran makes a mistake that we know you shouldn't be making, I don't need it then. I don't need it. And that's why if a guy goes out there and he's a rookie and he's running a route and he drops a pass, so be it. Shake it off, youngster. Get back out there. And I absolutely 100% agree with you. You have to find out right now in these next 3 weeks who's a part of the problem and who's a part of the solution. And what's funny is guys are going to want to play. Fred Warner's not going to want to come off the field. But for the interest, you kind of have to save him from himself at this point. And it's good to understand what you have, because you have to understand what you're doing, who's going to be here, who's not. And for me, I just have a tough time when a veteran is out there and he's making rookie mistakes, when I can have a rookie out there making rookie mistakes in the name of development. And I think that's what people are like. I want to see Ricky Pearsall. I want to see Jacob Cowing. I want to see every single young player that's not getting a shot at this point, because I don't need to see Jake Brendel anymore. I know what he is. What's Drake Nugent? What's Nick Sakel? I don't need to see, some of these other guys over here on defense or on offense. What are those guys? We know what all the set starters are. We know exactly what they are. At this point, it's not tanking, like you said. It's about figuring out who's part of the problem and who's a part of the solution, who's going to be here. Because I think we both suspect that the names on the back of the jerseys are going to change. And it's going to be some players that are beloved and have had great moments here. But at the organizationally, you have to look yourself in the mirror. And obviously, I thought this season was over after the Seattle game. It just felt like that was when the 49ers were broken. And then obviously you follow that up with two blowouts against Green Bay and Buffalo. I thought that was the end of it. And I thought at that point, you probably had to make a tough decision that you couldn't tell your veterans, because you still were mathematically involved in the playoffs. But you probably could have started this process a little bit earlier. Now, I get it. You can't do that. And you can't sell that to the fans. And you can't sell that to those veterans and those guys that are killing themselves on the rehab table and trying to get themselves out there to play. But realistically, this is something the 49ers probably could have done a few weeks ago. And realistically, you could have kicked off to the development process for a lot of people. And I think bringing Greenlaw back is more just to figure out where he's at physically. What do we do with him going forward? You bring Hufanga back and you find out, wait a minute, we thought he was the odd man out. And week to week, we thought, well, he's going to be the guy that's leaving. It's going to be Malik and Jair Brown. Well, hold on, not so fast. Hufanga's back. And now he's thrown himself back into the mix of whether he should stay. What do you do with other people? So this entire process, this evaluation process could have been kicked off a little bit earlier, but I understand why they didn't, because you can't sell that to the veterans. You can't sell that to the fans when you're still mathematically involved. But right now, this has to be full on. Let's get everybody that we can, that we don't know anything about, or that we don't know where they're going to develop, and get them on the field. Rookies can make rookie mistakes. Veterans can't make rookie mistakes. And I'm sorry, Tyshawn, Deebo Samuel, whatever it is. If you've got to be benched, you've got to be benched. You got your money. No more yapping. That's it. It's done. Let's see what Ricky Pearsall has. Let's see what Jacob Cowing has, because we've got to figure out how to proceed next season with this receiver room without you, which we felt that was already going to happen when you drafted Ricky Pearsall in tandem with Brandon Ayuk. But now all these things have changed. How does Brandon Ayuk look next year? How does he bounce back? What's Pearsall's development? Jawan Jennings and everything. It's you have to start to get a firm grip on what these guys are and what you project them to be. And I just feel like they probably could have kicked off this process just a little bit earlier, although I understand why they didn't.
I mean, and I don't expect, and I don't think they necessarily should be benching any healthy veteran players, but if guys are banged up, you don't need to play through that anymore. Whatever hip injury that Nick Bosa is playing through, he doesn't need to be playing through that. But if he's healthy, he should be on the field. Same with Fred Warner. I mean, he's got a broken bone in his ankle. They should get that fixed, right? There's no need to play through that anymore. And then when you go into the offseason, and you got to try to figure out how to Hufanga and Greenlaw back-to-back weeks. You feel them on the field. They make a difference.
Yes.
You got to figure out if you can get that cap space together. And if you have to let Deebo Samuel go to help find it, if you have to let Javon Hargrave go to help find it, then I think you have to do it, because those guys proved what they're worth to the 49ers. And so that's where I'm at. Yeah, I'm not benching guys that are healthy, but if it's close and there's someone you think might be as good or better in the future, then put them on the field and get some guys some work. And if guys are hurt, then they definitely shouldn't be playing through that right now and making things worse for the 2025 San Francisco 49ers. Because at this point, that's where we're at. I see a lot of comments in the chat about Brock Purdy. Where are you at with Brock Purdy, Jason?
Well, let's just be frank. It's been 4 out of the last 5 weeks that it hasn't looked right. I think the Bears game was the one that kind of gave you hope that there was still, that in the consistency. The rain stuff is an issue. The deep ball stuff is an issue. I wonder if he's 100%. I think that's another factor that we have to throw into this with the arm. But these are all factors the 49ers have to weigh when they go to do whatever it is that they do for the contract extension. I'll say this. I think Brock Purdy has kind of cost himself some money this season and lately, especially these last few performances. I think that can be a good thing because Brock Purdy may not be able to walk to the table and say, I want 60 million. And if he decides that I'm okay, I'll play on the 4th-year deal, you get your audition, and then you get to figure out what you do from there. Now, if he plays himself into a $60 million contract, then you've kicked it down another year. Also, the only other thing that would scare you is, if for him, if you go in the tank next season, which I'm not predicting that he will, if you go in the tank, then you're not going to get any sort of money. So I think the sweet spot is probably the Baker Mayfield type deal, $35-40 million, like right now. I think that would behoove him and the organization because it does seem like Purdy needs things to be a little bit more ideal at times than other quarterbacks. And I think you can't just say when things aren't going right, when the play calling's off, when the structure's off, when the game isn't going the right way, he's going to lift us. It almost feels like things have to be going in the right direction for Purdy to keep the ship steady. And if you can save millions of dollars, $20 million, whatever it is per year, and help him with offensive line and maybe revamp the defense and get you some defensive linemen or get yourself a wide receiver, I think that would only benefit him, his production, and the 49ers. I'm not out on Brock. Let me just say that. I'm not out on Brock. I think the way that we've seen this offense operate has been with point guard types. And the only quarterback that has really, really, really turned this to a downfield thing was, Matt Ryan's MVP year in Atlanta. And, you just watch how there's been guys who have been lifted by the system. But I do feel that there is a little bit of both here. There's a little bit of carrying the system at times with Brock and being very good. But the problem is when your arm is limited, especially in the rain or down the field, your decision-making has to be elite. It has to be perfect. So that's how you make up for having, less physical attributes as someone else. If that window is there and it's a little bit late, Josh Allen can bang that thing in there because he has a crazy arm. If you're late, it's a completely different story. So I do think there's circumstances that we have to consider here. Obviously, the injuries, nothing's really gone right with this team. The offensive line got pushed around and they got their asses kicked this week as well, too. Brock didn't play well, but I'm not out on Brock. I just think right now it would be smart for the 49ers to kind of wait and see this out because you're not going to move on from him this year. So he's under contract regardless. And if Purdy wants to hold out, then you've got to do a whole other different thing. But I just think that sweet spot is like that Baker Mayfield type contract. That would be best for Brock and obviously best for the team, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's frustrating because there's no middle class in the NFL at quarterback. There was the Daniel Jones contract, who I thought Daniel Jones, I didn't like that contract for the Giants at the time. I was like, what are you guys doing paying Daniel Jones? He hasn't even proven to be a middle class guy. Geno Smith is kind of the only middle class. You mentioned Baker Mayfield's kind of right there as well. But there's just no middle, like you don't get to pay the 10th best quarterback the 10th most money. And we saw that with Tua, and we see that time and time again. And Brock Purdy's awesome. And it takes away from his story and who he is as a player, because he's a really good player. And it's such an awesome story. And the economics of the NFL are just broken. There's no reason Brock Purdy taking his team to the Super Bowl should be making $900,000 in a year. But there's also no reason that Brock Purdy should be making $60 million a year either, right? He should be in that middle class. He should be making around the same amount of money that Geno Smith makes, that Daniel Jones got, that Baker Mayfield got. That's where he should be. That's his neighborhood, right? And the NFL tells us that, next quarterback up, you get 55 mil, you get 60 mil. And it's like, if you are paying Brock Purdy the same amount that the Bills are paying Josh Allen, or that the Chiefs are paying Patrick Mahomes, you're behind. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I like Brock Purdy. He's a really good player, but it changes the dynamic when you talk about how much you have to pay him. So that's really frustrating, I think, from a perspective of how you put together a football team, but you also don't want to have a quarterback and you don't want to get worse at quarterback. And Brock is a really good quarterback. But as we've seen, when conditions aren't great for him and it throws off that timing that you just talked about, it makes him a worse quarterback because he can't throw through the timing. So when a defense is able to muddy the picture for him and make things difficult on him, and he's not able to throw with the timing and he's not able to fit some things in, then it makes him a worse quarterback. And Brock he is what he is, and he's a really good quarterback. But if you have to pay him $55+ million a year, it makes the whole conversation, it makes the whole picture a little bit different. And it's just really unfortunate where the economics are in the NFL right now as far as putting together a team under the salary cap. Because to me, I would all day long and look, the next middle-class quarterback might be Sam Darnold.
Yes.
And so the Niners might have to play hardball with Brock Purdy. And then you have a quarterback who's holding out. And where does that put you in 2025? So this has to get figured out quick. So my idea on Brock Purdy is this. I'm going to run this by you real quick because, look, I do think the 49ers are in a situation, much like there's so many parallels between the 2020 season and the 2024 season, coming off a Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs, really injured season. You have a bad year. Niners ended up with the 12th pick in the draft. What did they do? They spent 3 first-round picks to go up and raise their ceiling at quarterback and go get Trey Lance. And we know how that all happened, right? And that all worked out. The way the season has gone and where the 49ers are in the draft, I'm not saying they're going to trade up and try to get Shedeur Sanders or whatever. But I do think the way the season has gone might give the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and Jed York, and they're all going to be involved in some of these decisions. I think it gives them the opportunity to maybe do something a little more gutsy than they would have if the Niners were a playoff team. They would just have to be, there'd be no choice. You pay Brock Purdy a whole bunch of money, right? The way the season has gone, I think gives the opportunity for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch to do something a little bit gutsier, a little bit more aggressive. And I'm not saying they're going to do the Trey Lance type of move, but something could be a little bit different this offseason that would not have been possible for them to do. They wouldn't have had the audacity to do it if the Niners just had a nice season and went into the playoffs and even lost a playoff game. So that's something to look out for there. And I think what I would do is you don't let this thing play out into August and September. I mean, it's insanity, right? Day one of free agency, what you do is you say, okay, Brock, we're at 35 per year. You're at 55 per year, right? And Brock Purdy's agent should say, I want $1 more than, I'm not taking $1 less than Tua, right? That's where their stance probably should be. And the 49ers, I think right now shouldn't offer that, shouldn't pay that to Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's not going to pay for whatever his 4th year, maybe he's up to like $1.1 million, Brock's not playing for that this year. So the 49ers can't go through this offseason if they're far apart. So if their first meeting, which should be the first thing they do with Brock's agent, if they're far apart, the 49ers should, instead of waiting until August or September, they should say, okay, go find it. They should do the DeForest Buckner thing, the Brandon Ayuk thing, but they should do it right away. Okay, find a team that's going to pay you $60 million. We're going to let you go. We're going to allow you to seek your own trade. Go find that. And I don't know how many teams are going to pay Brock Purdy that. And so 2 things happen. Either they bring you back a draft pick and say, hey, this team's willing to pay us even more than you were going to offer us. And you go, okay, well, maybe we should pony it up because that's how in demand you are, right? Let the league negotiate their contract for Brock Purdy. Or the Niners say, well, that's too much and we can't pay it. So we're going to take the draft pick and sign Sam Darnold or whatever. Go get Kirk Cousins, which he's washed too.
I was waiting for you to say that.
The theme of the show is washed. Aaron Rodgers, pretty washed. I can't see Aaron Rodgers and Kyle Shanahan getting along, to be honest with you. I don't think that's a good marriage. But Darnold is a really interesting one. And Darnold might get less money. Well, probably almost assuredly will get less money than Brock Purdy, I think, if Purdy signed a deal with the 49ers. Or the Brock Purdy's agent comes back and is like, yeah, well, you offered 35. We got 38 from this team. And you're like, okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Let's go 38 more or whatever, like whatever that scenario brings you, I think this could all get figured out before the draft and early in free agency, like day one of free agency. You could find out from the league. The league will tell you how much Brock Purdy's worth. I think you let the league negotiate this contract for you if you're the 49ers, because I don't think it'll be $60 million.
No. I'm so glad that you brought up Kirk. That should never be off the table, and that's not even trolling in any way. I think obviously it's already not working in Atlanta, and they have their backup plan in Penix. And then with Minnesota, as you're talking about with Darnold, I'm sure they'll be fine with J.J. McCarthy and Daniel Jones. I mean, they're going to be fine with that next year. And I don't think that's a bad plan at this point, because Darnold was supposed to be just a backup for J.J. or compete. And then one way or another, J.J. would have taken over. But I do want to kind of like talk about the point of the money and what this really means. And I'm not a cap expert. The cap is very real, by the way. It's not funny money, anything like that. Some are just better at manipulating it. Some understand it better. But when you're a quarterback and you're making a certain amount of money and it causes defensive players to leave or offensive players to leave due to the contract, you are sending that money to that quarterback under the assumption that they will cover up those warts, even if it's on defense. Hey, our defense is going to take a step back, but our offense is going to go up because of you, and you're going to carry us a little bit more. I think the evaluation process completely changes when you start to throw the money in there. And I think, obviously the draft has a stake in it, and he's making less than $1 million. But if you get $55-60 million and a premium player has to leave because of this, and whether that's offense or defense, you're tasked with lifting the team and carrying them. And do we think that Brock is that type of guy? And I think that's a little bit unfair as well, too. But that's the expectation that comes with the money. When you get that money, when you're up there, right? At least with Tua getting the money, they still were able to keep Tyreek. Devon Achane is somebody that they found in the draft. He's relatively cheap. They got Jonnu Smith on the cheap. Jalen Waddle is still relatively cheap, right? They're still doing those things. So Tua's not asked to do those same things. And in the Lions case, Panay's still relatively cheap. Jahmyr Gibbs is cheap. Amon-Ra, relative to his production, they're good. Laporta's on a rookie deal. Your window's open because you have all these young guys. But the 49ers are finding out whether their cheap talent is going to be impactful right away off the bat. And we love Renardo Green, we love Malik Mustafa, but Penei Sewell's blue chip. Sam Laporta's blue chip. Jahmyr Gibbs, those are guys, right? And not that these guys aren't guys. All of those guys are contributing impact players cheaply. Now, if you go into a draft class and you draft guys and they're adequate, somewhat good, that's fine. But then you look at the quarterback to say, now you've got to lift us. And that's the part that's going to make this whole money situation tricky, is you may be forcing Brock Purdy to do something that is not going to play well to his skills and is going to put him in a position where he's doing too much. Everyone needs system, but I don't think that you should be shouldering the entire load, Brock Purdy, and you should be a guy who is a little bit more of a point guard and a cog in the system, more than running it. And that's the part about the money and how much that impacts what you're asked to do and how you're evaluated. That's the part that's going to make this blow up into a completely different conversation.
No doubt. I got to get out of here. I'm up against it. Jason, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks, everybody, jumping in with us. I've got a lot more stuff I want to talk about, but some of it's off-season stuff. And guess what? We're going to have a lot more time. We're going to have a longer off-season than we're used to here when we were covering the San Francisco 49ers, Jason. So everybody, make sure you follow Jason at Jason Aponte 2103. Subscribe to his channel. Subscribe here to OT with BP. I'm at BD Peacock on Twitter. And, of course, you guys know where to find us, and we're going to be around. And a little draft season talk next time. I want to talk about both lines on the San Francisco 49ers and some more off-season, I don't know, just like an off-season manifesto, I guess. And what the season's still going on, I know, Jason, but there's some big picture conversations I think we still need to have here. So thanks, everybody, for joining us, and we'll be back next week right here, Picante style. Talk to you then.